Happy New Year, boys and girls, and with it being January, that means we're now finally, once again, within the month where we should see the official gameplay reveal of Football Manager 2025. Because when they released this blog post back in October, the one that said the game was delayed, right down here at the end of this post, we got this little snippet of new information. The new gameplay reveal will now also move until the end of January 2025. So it's still going to be a couple of weeks away, but I figured New Year, let's have a little bit of a recap on what we know and what to expect and what I'm expecting from FM25. So starting things off, what do we actually know? Obviously the game was delayed until March. So we know the game's coming out in March, and I think we can be pretty confident the game will actually release in March. It's the end of the financial year. There's all kinds of reasons why they would have to release in March. Whether the game is finished or not, I'm not suggesting the game won't be finished, but I think regardless of the state that it's in, it gets released in March. I'm really not expecting a further delay. Things like the shiny new licenses, the shiny old licenses will be for specific time periods that I suspect have a good chance of being tied into the financial years. Obviously, they want to release a game every financial year to keep the shareholders happy, to keep the parent company Sega happy. I think whatever happens, we are getting a new game in March. We also, as part of the announcement that the game was delayed, got this little sentence of delicious new information. We can confirm advanced access will be available ahead of the new release date, and when we're confident on how long that period will be, we'll update you at the first opportunity. So if you remember when they originally announced the October release date, it was with no early access, formerly known as the beta. That wasn't going to be in the version that came out in October, November, whenever it might have come out. They are confirming that as part of this new March release, we will have a beta, or an advanced access as they're now calling it. So there's a chance we could be playing this game as early as next month, depending on when in March they slot the release date, how long a beta period might be. We know at the very least we're getting some kind of advanced access. In my dream world, the game releases on the 1st of March and we're playing the new game on Valentine's Day on advanced access. That might be a little bit optimistic, but at least we know we're now surely only within 6 to 8 weeks of getting our sticky little fingers on the game. Fingers crossed. And of course, we also know that we're going to have news on the game at some point within the next few weeks. It said in that original blog post, the gameplay reveal moves to the end of 2025. I suggest that means that whole roadmap that they made such a big fuss about when they originally released it. I think we can probably assume that roadmap starts, let's say, last week of January. So if we have a look at what the roadmap was originally planned to be, in fact, do we still have the roadmap on here, or have they hidden the whole roadmap? We had a beautiful roadmap that was all planned out with lovely graphics before, and it looks like the roadmap has entirely disappeared. So I guess it's going to be reinvented. Let's see if we can find a picture of the old one. There we go. Good old Reddit. So this was the original roadmap that was going to go 1 week at a time, showing us, we assumed it would be 1 week at a time because we were going to be releasing on the 26th of November and we were expecting one of these per week. So if we're now assuming this is going to happen from the end of January, I think they're going to have to change this order around a little bit. I think if they come back after 3 months of silence and just reintroduce women's football again at the end of January, they are going to have a riot on their hands. I'm not one of these meatheads who is against women's football being in the game. I think it's a great inclusion, but please, Sports Interactive, don't headline with it again. It is upsetting a lot of people. Let's do it, celebrate it, include it, but please don't lead with it as your first communication in months. So I suspect we'll get the interface, because we already have a bit of an idea of what the interface is going to look like from the Steam page. We have all of these images from the Steam page that actually show us examples of work in progress screenshots of what the interface, at least back in September, October time, was supposed to look like. We obviously have no idea how close to this it's actually going to be, but based on the screenshots that we had back then, the very clearly labeled work in progress ones, it is a different looking game, a cleaner looking game. We have all these little boxes that are all going to be clickable, and when you click on them, they zoom up into focus on the screen to make it easier to navigate using a controller or a touchscreen device in addition to using a keyboard and mouse. And the general idea is to make it so that the game looks and feels the same, whatever device you're playing it on, across PC, console, tablet, mobile, maybe. I don't know if mobile's necessarily included in that. But we know they had these images ready then. So I would expect the end of January, we're going to get a proper look at this working. And then going back to the headlines that we had on our roadmap before, there is going to be a proper demonstration of how women's football is going to work. We're also going to get something to do with tactics. So I guess tactics is having a big overhaul. So there's going to be a whole bunch of new stuff around tactics. Match experience. Obviously, we are moving to Unity. The whole reason this delay happened in the first place is because the game is transferring to a completely different engine. It is going to be running on Unity. And part of the reason for running on Unity was to allow them to bring the interface up into this decade and also update the match physics, match graphics, the match day experience. So we're definitely going to get some changes there. Now, please don't expect the game to look like FIFA. I think at this point I don't know. I feel like creators are maybe managing expectations more than Sports Interactive are currently. But if you're expecting this game to look like FIFA, even something like FIFA 15, it ain't going to look like that, boys and girls. I suspect it's going to look like Football Manager. But if it looks like a version of Football Manager that maybe moves a little bit smoother, is a little bit less signposty with some of the stuff that's going on screen, and if it just feels a little bit more natural and a little bit more real, then it doesn't need to look shiny and lifelike faces and all that kind of stuff. It can still be these tiny little footballers running around on a screen. I don't mind that at all. I don't think it needs to look like FIFA, but it does need to animate a little bit better. Have a little bit better in the way of physics, maybe more accurately represent what the game wants the match engine to do, because sometimes we get stuff happen that seems very, very, very clunky in the match engine because of the limitations on the current match engine, and hopefully we get a little bit less of that. It becomes a little bit less predictable and a little bit more real looking and real feeling as we're playing the game. And there's also going to be some changes to the manager themselves. I don't know what they could possibly be changing there, other than maybe giving us a different color of suit that we could wear, or maybe new glasses, new hairstyles. We got watches last year, didn't we? Maybe we're going to get jewelry or tattoos, or who knows. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but I can't even speculate on what that might be. So if we dive back in for a second and have another look at these screenshots, we can start to pick out some of the stuff that was at least intended to be different, some of the things that we know. One of the big headlines that we know about, obviously women's football is being introduced. So you have a men's football or women's football drop down thing on there. So women's football is definitely going to be part of this. And also the Premier League license is going to be part of this for the first time ever, which I know a lot of people are like, who cares about the Premier League license? I just use badge packs and face packs on my game anyway. Yeah, so do I. From a gameplay perspective, it might not make much of a difference, but there's been a lot of people concerned that FM25 is going to flop. It has the Premier League license. That means you can have Premier League teams, Premier League players promoting the game. If you have an advertising campaign for FM25 that has some of these players on or some of these teams on, this game is not going to flop. It is going to be bigger and more downloaded, more purchased than ever before, because there's going to be more people finding out about it. FPL, for example, has 10 million players. Football Manager doesn't have 10 million players, but you can get an awful lot closer by working with the Premier League to get the name out there. So the Premier League license is more than just saving you a few minutes and getting badges and kits and faces and renaming Manchester United and all that kind of stuff. It's all of the stuff that can take place away from the game that you might not immediately feel when you're playing it, but you're going to notice it when it comes to just general awareness from the public of Football Manager 2025 existing. Looking at some more of these screens on here, you can see this is where we've got these very iPad-like, very console-like screens, where people have talked about this being the game dumbed down. I think it's just the game being smartened up and cleaner looking for 2025. It doesn't look like Football Manager from 10 years ago anymore. We've been looking at the same screen set up the same way for years and years and years. And I mean, if they didn't do this, what else could they do to make the game look and feel different? And I know there's people on the whole, if it ain't broke, don't fix it thing. But there's also an even louder group of people complaining that the game hasn't changed in 5 years. You can't have it both ways. If the game's going to change, it has to change to something. And this is a change. And I think it looks smart. I think it's going to look really good on videos. I think from a content consuming perspective, you're going to have a much clearer idea of what's going on when watching videos, watching streams, especially if you're watching them on phones or smaller screens. And I think once you get used to it, it's going to be much easier to navigate around, because everything you need is going to be on that one screen. And say if you want to find out about squad numbers, you just click. I mean, my understanding of it is you click where it says squad numbers, it brings up the squad number thing. You're done with it, you close it off, and you're back to this main screen, and you've got these various areas that are then set up like this, and less clicks to get to some of the different sections is what I'm expecting it to be. We don't want menus. We want stuff that works like modern apps. Of course, the inbox is disappearing as part of this. It's being replaced by the portal, which from what I understand is just a renaming of inbox. I'm yet to be convinced it's going to look significantly different or work significantly differently, but the fact they've renamed it suggests there must be some changes around it, you would think. They've shuffled around a little bit the way attributes are displayed on screen. So the set piece stuff has been moved out separately from the other technical stuff. And we've got some actual numbers returning. Remember when they removed all the numbers from stuff like fitness and conditioning and all that kind of stuff? They've brought numbers back in regarding positional suitability. So you can now see that for Mitoma, for example, he's a 3+ as an inside forward, a winger and an inverted winger, but only a 2 as a wide target forward. I mean, these have been shown graphically in the game for years, but that's probably easier to interpret at a glance, and you can see which roles he's better suited for. And when you click on them, just like in the game now, it's going to highlight the roles, the attributes most suited to each role. And then again, you've got all this clickable stuff down the bottom that you can click on. It's going to jump up onto the screen, look a little bit bigger, and you're going to be able to drill down and get more information. There's an example of a women's footballer, which is exactly the same layout of screen as with men's football. Don't worry, you're not going to be able to have women playing against men. It's not FIFA. They're going to be 2 separate bunches of players in 2 separate bunches of teams. So you don't need to be able to directly compare them. They're not saying that Fran Kirby's dribbling of 18 means she's exactly the same dribbling as Mitoma. I don't know. I couldn't tell you if either of them are an 18 out of 20, but they're not saying Fran Kirby, let's say 17 acceleration compared to 17 acceleration. They're not saying she is as fast as him. They're saying as far as a women's footballer is concerned, she's a 17 out of 20, which is different from a men's 17 out of 20. At least that's my understanding of how it's going to work. So it doesn't matter that it's on the same scales and the same star ratings, because the men and the women aren't going to play against each other. So it doesn't really matter. And then we see the final one of these, which shows us that Evan Ferguson apparently is a wing back and attacking midfielder, but even though it's not highlighted on there. So I think that's a mistake, and it's been carried over from Mitoma, and they've just left that on. They've changed this, but not changed that. Bless their cotton socks, but there's Evan Ferguson for you as well. So we don't learn a huge amount from those screenshots, but it's more than Football Manager gave us on their website, and that's all available on the actual Steam page if you want to go and have a little nose around on there. Other stuff that we know, they are removing international football, they're removing fantasy draft, they're removing horror of horrors, player weights, and there's lots of stuff that's being taken out of the game. So I think it's fair to assume this is going to be a game that has fewer features than previous versions of Football Manager. And I personally think that's fine as someone who plays a lot of games like Civilization. And I've used this comparison before. The way Civilization works, and the way, ironically, Championship Manager used to work years ago, is every 2, 3, 4, however many years, you get the main title update. So you get Championship Manager 2. And then 4 years later, you get Championship Manager 3. It's the same with Civilization. And each time you get that title update, you get a scaled down version of the game, but it looks, feels, and plays different. But they've scaled it all the way back and given you a bare bones basic version of the new game that is different. It feels different, but if you compared features like for like, you can't actually do as much stuff. Civilization does this every 3 or 4 years. It takes out loads of the new features, but gives you a game that looks, feels, and plays differently to the previous generation. You have generations of games. This is going to be a new generation of Football Manager. And then you have a number of updates each year, which are either, I mean, on Civilization, there'll be as DLCs. On Championship Manager, it used to be the dated versions of the game. So you'd have Championship Manager 2, then you'd get Championship Manager 97, 98, for example, which is built on the Championship Manager 2 game, but has new features and new data and stuff added to it. And that, I think that's what FM25 is going to feel like. It's going to feel like a new version of Football Manager. Football Manager 3, effectively. Football Manager 1 was that first version of the game that we got back 20 years ago, whenever it was, when they first split from Championship Manager. And then I would argue Football Manager 2 would be when they introduced the 3D graphics, maybe. And then there's not been, and we've just been playing variations of Football Manager 2 for the last 10 years or however long it's been. And it's felt it these last few years. It has felt it. Football Manager 2025, Football Manager 3, if you want to look at it that way, is going to look different. It's going to play different. It's going to feel different. It's got a new user interface. It's going to have a new match experience. It's in a new engine. It is going to be a completely different version of the game, and it will feel different, but it won't have as many new features on, or as many features as the previous games had. And we'll gradually start having them drip back to us over the next 2 or 3 versions of the game. And we will eventually get to the point where we have international football back. We have fantasy draft back. We have the stuff that's being taken out will be back, plus new features as well. They're not just going to spend the next 3 years putting everything back in that they're taking out. They'll spend the next 3 years adding stuff that will improve the game, some of which will be reinventions of older features and some of which will be completely new stuff. And that's fine too. What I don't want is for them to then spend the next 10 years doing that. I want in 3 or 4 years time them to do a whole new version again and reinvent the wheel again and get us used to the way modern video games work. I think Football Manager players can sometimes be a little bit insulated and not really understand how gaming in general works, and because of that feel like they're being ripped off by having features taken out of the game. And it's not that at all. You're getting a different game, a new game, and you haven't had a new game for a long time. But the flip side of that, and again, something you can take from other games, the way gaming works, is part of the game being completely new and completely rebuilt and in a new engine is you're going to have to expect it to be a little bit buggy. Not only have they removed some of the features that are staying in there probably aren't going to work as well, and there's going to be teething problems. We've already seen that. That's why the game was delayed in the first place, because it wasn't ready. It wasn't playable to a high enough standard for Sports Interactive to be able to release it. Fingers crossed it now is. Obviously, we don't know until they start announcing some stuff. But fingers crossed it is going to be playable and it is going to feel different and feel like an improvement. But I think we have to brace ourselves for the fact that it is going to be a little bit buggy. And those bugs might not get fixed until FM26. And I fully expect FM26 to be out later this year as well. I think we'll have 6 months of FM25 and FM26 will come out again in November, because I think they'll want to get back to their normal release schedule as soon as possible. And not only do you need to brace yourself and prepare for it to be buggy, I think you also need to prepare for it to maybe not be as easy to mod as it's been in the past. Obviously, we've all got used to this thing where the new game releases and you can immediately install all your mods. You can install your new skin. You can install all of your data packs and your badge packs and your face packs and your kit packs and all that kind of stuff. And the reason you've been able to do that goes back again to the fact that it's basically been the same game forever. So skins and mods and data packs that worked on FM24 Also worked on FM18 by and large. There'll be a few tweaks here and there, but that's really all these creators needed to do every year. Slightly tweak what they'd done the year before, and it's going to work again. Whereas we're now in a world where nobody's even going to be able to start experimenting with that until the game releases. And even when the game releases, it might not be as mod friendly as it's been in the past. We don't know. This is pure speculation mode now, but part of getting the Premier League license might be that they've had to agree to make it a little bit less easy to mod, because let's face it, they've very much held the door open for mods for the last 20 years and said, we haven't got the licenses, but here, if you want all that stuff, you just drop it into this folder we've left really conveniently in your documents. It's not even hidden away with the game files. There's a Sports Interactive folder that's now in your documents. Just drop your kits and stuff in here. They'll work. It's fine. Come along, mod the game. It might not be like that anymore. We don't know. So don't expect to be able to skin it on day one. Download your custom databases and custom kits and badges and stuff on day one. I'd like to think that kind of stuff will happen eventually, but you might have to get used to a few weeks or potentially a few months of just playing the vanilla version of the game, which does make that Premier League license seem a lot more attractive now, doesn't it? The game should theoretically look and feel much more similar across platforms as well. And I know you get the dissenting voices of, oh, they're dumbing down the PC version for the console players. No, they're just making it consistent across platforms. There's still going to be differences between the console and the tablet and the PC game. Don't worry, PC Master Race. You're still going to be playing the best version of the game, but it's going to look a lot closer to the other versions, which for me as a content creator is great, because the amount of comments I get from people who have downloaded the game on their Xbox or their PC who want to know what's going on but don't recognize the game because it's so different from the one that I'm playing. That's mental. That should never have been a thing that was happening. That doesn't happen in other games. If you play Civilization or Fortnite or Call of Duty or any other game, if you play it on PC, it's the same game as you get on console. It's the same game as you get on tablet. It's the same game as you get on handhelds. And it might not have quite so many features on the less powerful systems, and it might not look quite so shiny graphically, but at its core, you recognize it as the same game. And that's not been the case with Football Manager. And if you really think about it, that's insane. And they're fixing that. And that's a good thing. So now if you as a PC player pick up the console version, you'll know what's going on. You'll know how to control it. If you as a console player want to try out the PC version but don't like a keyboard and mouse, you can use a controller on the console. For me as a Steam Deck user, I'm now going to have native console controls in the PC version. So if I want to play this on my Steam Deck, it will actually work, which is going to be absolutely glorious. And PC and Linux and Steam-based gaming handhelds are a big thing now, and Football Manager will now work with them, which is great. But most importantly, I just want the new game to feel like the starting point for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm not expecting a game that is better than FM24. I think we need to manage expectations. If Sports Interactive aren't going to manage them, I'm going to manage them for them. Don't expect FM25 to be fundamentally a better game than FM24. Expect it to be a different game, and the starting point for 26, 27, 28. And by the time we get 2 or 3 years down the road and they've had their experience with the new engine and they've got all the old features back in and they've given us all the shiny new features and they've gradually improved the game each year, and we get the most complete version of Football Manager ever once again, which hopefully won't take 20 years to get to this time, but hopefully we'll be able to look back and say, actually, there were teething problems at the time, but the change was worth it. And we are now playing a game that is much better than what we had before, because that's the situation we're in from the last time this happened. Because the last time this happened, I've talked about it a lot. Championship Manager 4 went through the exact same process as this. It was delayed. It eventually came out in March. It was still a buggy mess. And you didn't get a version that actually worked until the following year's game came out in like the October, November of that same year. And even then, people are like, this is why Championship Manager 102 is so loved, because people would be playing CM4 and the versions that came after it and still be sulking about it. And they would go back to CMO 102, which, as someone who lived through it, it wasn't all that. It was the most complete version of Championship Manager, I want to say 2, it might have been 3. I lose track, but it was the most complete version of that version of the game. And it was great, but By the time we got to the end of Championship Manager 4, it was better than CM102. Football Manager 05, I think, was the first one. Or was it 07? Whenever it was, the first Football Manager, that was better than Championship Manager 0102. And people always say, what's your favourite version of Football Manager? Usually the most recent one. It gets better every year. This is the first time that might not be the case, but I fully believe 2 or 3 years down the line, I'll be saying that again. What's the best one ever? This one. FM27, best version of the game ever. We just have to be a little bit patient, and I promise you, it will be fine. They know what they're doing. They've been doing this for 30 plus years, and it's my favourite game, and I think I'm still going to enjoy playing it. And hopefully you will too. And that has been a really long and waffly video. I made notes and I've not really stuck to my notes. I've not stuck to the structure that I had planned. I've just waffled about FM25 for half an hour. Enjoy editing this, but I just wanted to have a chat with you. It's January. We're going to get news soon, and hopefully it's going to be good news. And I'm sure we'll chat again as soon as some actual news happens. But if you have enjoyed the video, weird video this, wasn't it? But if you have enjoyed it, leave a thumbs up on it for me. I need the views. The delay in the game, goodness me, my pocket is stinging me. That's why I had to do my notes on paper rather than an iPad. I've gone back in time. I can't afford the electricity for an iPad at the moment. So please like this video, subscribe to the channel for all the latest FM25 news, plus the daily FM24 videos that will be running all the way through to whenever that advanced access happens. Thank you very much for watching.